Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to ITHive.org's Saturday morning tech show, episode 31. And it's just the lighting here a little bit. It's a little bit dreary out today. So I just want to talk this week a little bit of continuation of what we discussed last week concerning routers. And I was watching Security Now, as I often do, and with Steve Gibson, and he was talking about routers, right? And how these things are largely missed in IT support. Maybe not necessarily for bigger companies, because I'm sure they were on top of their stuff. But for the smaller businesses, small enterprises, residential, all these devices, nobody really thinks that they're going to be an issue, and until they're presented with something that prevents them from doing something, right? And the real concern here is that these boxes that you get, from your provider or you bought at the store or whatever, their default settings are set so that they'll work. Their default settings are not set so that they'll be secure, right? Because security can be a complicated thing, and manufacturers want their product to work, right? The settings and everything are there, but they need to be configured. And the problem is you plug it in and, everything works, no issue, right? So that's one issue, setting it up properly. Okay, and securing it and removing that default password. Most of the time when I work at a customer's and I need to access their router to configure it or whatever, it takes me about 5 minutes to find out what the password is to get in, right? Which is a little disturbing. But anyway, so that's an issue. This box is basically your access to the internet. So everything that is outside of that box, all the hackers, the bad guys and everything, they'll see that box first. And if there's a weakness, right, they can expose that. So anyway, it's probably good to check that. Make sure the settings are correct, and also the other side of it, and this is an ongoing regular thing, and this is why ITHive.org is doing what it's doing. That router should be checked on a periodic basis to make sure that it is up to date. Just like everything else, it has software in it. Software has the chance of being insecure, just by the nature of it. The fact that it's changeable, new threats come out all the time, different weaknesses, and they need to be fixed, right? So it's good to, have somebody on your side that can look after this stuff for you, or do it yourself, one of the two, so really, really, really important. This goes hand in hand with the very, very popular things coming up, like the Internet of Things, like, the fish tank thermometer that, reports up to the internet, or the doorbell that's connected to the internet, or anything else, the fridge that's connected to the internet. We're going to see more and more and more of these things coming out, right? And they are all also vulnerable, right? And they need to be set up properly too. Personally for myself, if I'm setting up devices like that, doorbells and other things like that, even for a residential customer, I would keep it isolated from the regular network, if that makes sense to do that. But it's probably a good approach. They're not necessarily all that secure. Unfortunately, we still live in a world where money dictates, and in that and in your buying philosophy, if you're considering money and money only, you're likely to buy products that are going to be cheap and well, not just cheap dollars and cents wise, but cheaply made, and your cost of ownership of that will go up, and also the frustration level. So really, and I've done this for 25 years, and I've been in situations before where customers have bought stuff and it just doesn't fly, right? And they're frustrated and they have issues. So we don't want to do that. It's better to get good products and set them up, configure them properly in the first place, and then have them checked on a periodic basis. That is the way. Welcome to 2018, right? And it's always been like that, right? But I think as we move forward now, it's becoming more and more important that people have some tech support on an ongoing basis and make sure that their stuff is set up properly. So, and I see this firsthand with our clients, because they'll have little things. Like I had a client today called me from Alberta and said that their printer wasn't working, right? So like always, I said, well, book an appointment, and which they did. And the following morning, I sat with them, looked at the printer, and it was a simple problem, right? And we had this solved in 10 minutes, right? It didn't cost the customer any more money because he was using the time that he accumulates from his membership. He was happy. It was a simple error that he had on his system. They had removed the old printer a while back and bought a new one and set it up. They did that all themselves. That's fine, right? But the remnants of the old printer were still there, and he was accidentally printing to the old printer. Very simple thing. But I showed him that, and I gave him the education and explained, okay, why it was not working, and then we tested it out, and it was fine. So there's like an education thing that went on. So that wasn't really a security example necessarily, but these are the things that we do on an ongoing basis. So the other aspect, and I've dubbed this show with responsibility and network security. And I gotta address the responsibility thing too, because this is such a frustrating thing for folks that do IT support, and particularly for us, sometimes is the real lack of knowledge, general knowledge of the importance of supporting your technology in a proper way. And I still find even today that even my own customers, right, that I'm explaining these concepts to them, and it's really hard to get that messaging corrected. And so what we often do is if we see a problem or a concern or so, if that's a ticket that's been generated automatically, or we generate one based on some findings that we find, we do that. We send an email out to the customer saying, hey, this is the issue or the concern we have. Please book an appointment so we can look at this. Now, the customer doesn't react to that, okay? And it's kind of maybe a harsh reality, but one of the big core messages we teach our customers, and everyone should understand, okay, is that you need to treat your technology and the health of your technology very seriously. If you don't, it's going to cost you eventually. Might not even cost you dollars and cents wise, but it will cost you. It'll cost you an additional frustration. It'll cost you in losing data or any number of things, right? The service that we provide is to deal with things when they're small, take care of them, make sure, real proactive maintenance, true proactive maintenance, and education to back that up. Because if you don't understand what's happening with your technology, right, and we don't educate you to make sure that you can understand, then that's a problem. You need to know, right? Because you're the one using this computer. You're on the internet every day. You're doing things. You need to know what the risks are, why we do certain things, why it's important to, investigate things that aren't running properly on your machine. And always, 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 always. And I challenge everyone to do this. I do this with my customers on a regular basis. It's the biggest test. I've mentioned this before on this show. But look at your piece of technology, make it disappear mentally in your head, and say, what have I just lost? Because the answer to that is what you should be protecting, right? And don't be complacent, because technology will fail. It always does. And it always gets you at the wrong time. And if it does, what are you going to do then? Do you have a plan? Do you know what to do? Right? Do you even understand what you might be losing? Right? It's good to go through these exercises because, it's heartbreaking sometimes. I recount, I've had this many times where I've been in situations where, somebody didn't protect their data. Let's say it's a big one, right? And then something fails, right? And then they've lost everything. And yeah, sure, we can always do data recovery, right? But data recovery can, last I checked, bare minimum, you're talking $375 to start. And then it goes up from there. Could be $1,000, $2,000, depending on the nature of the problem and what has to be done, right? So, what do you do, right? And then, of course, there's all the frustration and anxiety around that. It's much better just to deal with the situation in real time and make sure that nothing is getting, destroyed or missing or at risk or anything like that. So, back to the responsibility thing, and unfortunately, I don't know why people do this, right? I had a business contact me about a month ago, and they wanted some IT support. The business owner was claiming, oh, well, they're really busy and they got all kinds of things going on and all that. And, so, yeah, and there was a lot of problems, clear example of an organization that's never had any IT support or at least never ongoing IT support because they were set up horribly. Lots of issues. So in my initial encounter with them, I went on site and I did an assessment and I looked at everything and all that and talked to the owner. We figured out where all the sore points were. We were going to put together a plan and all that. And so I did that, sent them out an invoice for that work and a plan to, next steps and all that stuff. And you hear from the guy. So I don't know what's up with that, right? But clearly he needs the help, right? And, but what do you do, right? So I don't know. So there's totally lack of communication there. And, I really, for me, a business owner, I'm pretty particular on the customers I work with or we work with. And one of the key things is communication. If it's not important to you, it's not important to us. and And, if we're telling you something needs to be done, we're saying you should make this an important thing and we should deal with it, right? So what do you do? So I'm not sure what we do with that relationship. Unfortunately, I suspect might have to fire that client. I would very much like to talk to the owner before we do anything like that, but doesn't respond to anything. So I don't know. Maybe it's just a fly-by-night business that a lot of talk, and maybe there really was no substance there to begin with. It's the risk we take as business owners, right? And I'm not going to start to get customers to give deposits in advance and stuff like that. The relationship that I strive for is trusting ones. And so to get trust, you have to give trust. And, well, sometimes that comes with a little bit of risk. So what do you do? Anyway, over 15 minutes this week. Well, it went by quickly. We will all talk next week. Yeah, we will go from there. So as always, if you have comments, questions, concerns, put them in the comments. I'll respond. And if you have any ideas for what we want, what you want me to talk about or address or anything like that, then please send them my way as well. Okay. So until next week, we'll talk to you all later. Be safe and have a great week. Bye.